win, lose, or draw in this election, will you commit here today for a peaceful transferal of power after the election? And there has been rioting in Louisville. There's been rioting in many cities across this country, red and your so-called red and blue states. Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else. Go ahead.
That is President Trump on Wednesday. Yesterday, the press secretary told reporters, quote, the president will accept the results of a free and fair election. And Vice President Pence said he and the president will, quote, accept free and fair election results, no doubt about it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tweeted, the winner of the November 3rd election will be inaugurated on January 20th. There will be an orderly transition, just as there has been every 4 years since 1972. The number 2 Republican in the Senate, Senator John Thune, echoed that sentiment, but there were also a number of Republicans, including the president, who looked to blame Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton just a week ago or so told Joe Biden, do not accept the results of the election under any circumstances. But you don't ask her that question. You only ask me the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that the president will accept the result. We've got to make sure that it's fair. And I would ask you the same question asked Manu. Hillary Clinton said Joe Biden should not accept the result of the election under any circumstances. Go ask the same question of every Democrat if they think if it's a fair election that they will support the outcome of it.
But she's not the candidate. The president's the candidate. He's not committing to accept.
How many people have you asked on the Democratic side whether or not they would support the outcome of the election? But once you do that, you pass.
I mean, Democrats have already obviously made it very clear that they don't intend to do that. Well, first of all, they didn't do it 4 years ago, obviously. I mean, you know, they used the power of the presidency during the transition to spy on the incoming president. Now, of course, you know, the motto is for the Democrats that Joe Biden should never concede the election ever, no matter what.
Mr. Leader, what do you plan to do if President Trump refuses to engage in a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the election?
President Trump will peacefully come to be sworn in again. It'll be a smooth transition, regardless of the outcome. I'm concerned of what I'm hearing on the other side of the aisle. I'm concerned that the Democrat nominee, you asked me a question, if I may. I'll answer your question. The Democrat nominee, Hillary Clinton, has gone on television.
She's not the Democratic nominee.
The last time the Democrat nominee from the last election has gone on television advising the current Democrat nominee to have the former nominee tell him, never concede.
So that was our own Casey Hunt in an extraordinary exchange with Kevin McCarthy, the House leader, Republican House leader.
Oh, my God.
His concern lies with Hillary Clinton and not with the repeated comments from the President of the United States about the transfer of power, Casey. So what exactly did Hillary Clinton say? What are they talking about here?
Yeah, well, first, I would just say, Willie, that they're talking about Hillary Clinton both because it seems like they would prefer to be running against her, but also because they don't have anything to point to that Joe Biden has said that would generate this problem. Hillary Clinton advised Biden not to concede until all of the votes are counted. This is what she said in an interview with The Recount.
Say Biden, say Biden wins. What do you think Trump will do?
Look, I think that they have a couple of scenarios that they're looking toward. One is messing up absentee balloting.
Right, of course.
They believe that helps them. So that they then get maybe a narrow advantage in the Electoral College on Election Day. Because remember, we've seen a couple of cases, like in Wisconsin, where they did everything they could to mess up voting. But because courts had ordered absentee ballots to be counted if they were postmarked on Election Day, Democrats actually won some important races there. At least we know more about what they're going to do. And Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
So, of course, that about election night, the counting of the ballots, Joe.
So what you're saying, Casey, is she never said never concede. She said don't concede on election night. Don't concede until we count all the votes. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. And you saw there that she was talking through the scenarios where the Trump campaign, as we know, potentially laying the groundwork for litigation as these votes are all counted. Some of the earlier counts that we may see likely to show, and potentially that President Trump has an advantage on election night itself. And, she came under criticism, and perhaps rightly so, for not conceding on election night in 2016. She conceded the morning after. But Democrats, don't forget, are not necessarily thinking about 2016 in this context. They're thinking about 2000, when Al Gore went out and conceded, and it was seen later as a major mistake because Democrats feel the votes weren't counted in a way that they think was accurate in Florida, and that there were some mistakes made by the Gore campaign back then. And obviously, as we have already outlined throughout the show this morning, the way in which these ballots are going to get counted, the potential issues with the pandemic, all of the various states, the way they govern these different things. Some states have never really grappled with major mail-in balloting before. They don't even, in some cases, start counting the ballots that they've already received before Election Day. This is actually, your home state of Florida is out ahead of everybody in this. They start counting the ballots, I believe it's 22 some days before Election Day. But it certainly seems to me, and the Democrats that I have talked to say, look, Hillary Clinton wasn't saying don't ever concede the election to Donald Trump. And I just would say also, Joe, she's not the Democratic nominee. What is Joe Biden saying about this? Anderson Cooper asked him about it. He said, Anderson Cooper asked, would you support a peaceful transfer of power? Biden said, sure, I want all the votes counted, but if in the end the result is not me, then sure, we will have a peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah. Tom Ricks, I keep talking about Tom Ricks's great book, First Principles. It's going to be coming out. Tom studied the first 4 presidents of the United States. And he was talking about the time when George Washington had to decide whether he was going to run for a 3rd term, or whether, like the Roman general Cincinnatus, he was going to go back to his farm after he saved the country. And Ricks said that's the ultimate test of a democracy. That's the ultimate test of a constitutional republic. And no one had ever given up power willingly before in America. And because there had never been a president before in America. So George Washington making that decision voluntarily was one of the great defining moments in American history. And it began a 240-year history of a peaceful transfer of power. And so the question does not go to Hillary Clinton any more than it goes to Mookie Betts, because neither Hillary Clinton nor Mookie Betts are president of the United States. The question, which our constitutional republic rests on, is whether the sitting president of the United States, like George Washington and the other 43 presidents that followed him before Donald Trump, whether Donald Trump will peacefully allow there to be a peaceful transition of power. And what he said yesterday was that that he wasn't going to answer that question. He said it'll be peaceful if we get rid of the ballots, which is what he said. All he said was it'll be peaceful if I win by rigging the vote. So that's what this president said that no other president has said, and that's why it's so dangerous. And yes, people can pretend that it's not, but again, your words are recorded for posterity. Willie.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.